Hello, it's Ernesto. I'm a film composer and I make these videos to document my career as one, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing. Okay, so this has been one of my most highly requested videos ever. I've posted my Notion template on places like Reddit and Instagram, and people have asked me how it works and to do a video over it, and that's what I'm doing now. I was always tentative of doing a video because it kept evolving over time, and it still does, but I feel like it's at the point now where this can really help somebody who wants a system to organize their projects. Which brings me to something else. I said in the intro that I'm a film composer, but number one, I rarely ever get paid, and two, I'm still in college, but that doesn't stop me from taking this seriously. It's what I want to end up doing with my life, and I have a system that I think works for me where I'm at in my career, and I know that the template will scale with me as I continue to grow. And if it's something that maybe you're more advanced or maybe you're not as advanced, you can tweak this setup to however you need it so that it's best suits you. So with Notion specifically, it's allowed me to be very organized with everything revolving around scoring a film. I usually score short films and the occasional TV episode here and there. And in fact, when it comes to scoring, everything that isn't music lives in Notion. But okay, what exactly is Notion? To me, it can be anything you want it to be. I compare it to the software equivalent of like a box of Lego bricks. On their own, you look at the Lego bricks and you're not sure what to make, but if you have a purpose for something, then you can build whatever you want out of it. And I think Notion is very powerful in that kind of way. For me, where Notion really shines is as a project manager. Some people like to make to-do lists for, taking out the trash and whatnot. I don't think it works as well for those kinds of things. But if you have large projects that you need to be organized with, then I think Notion is something you should at least consider. Also, something else, this won't be a tutorial for how to use Notion. The Notion can get pretty deep, but I think you can get a good sense of how it works by watching me go over this template. But if you do want to know more, I'll link a video in the description of one of Thomas Frank's Notion videos. This was the video that introduced me to Notion. In fact, his template for his YouTube videos is the basis in design for my film scoring template. And of course, you'll also be able to find this template in the description below if you want to try it out and tweak it to what you need. Okay, enough chit chat. Let me just show you how this thing works and how I use Notion to score movies. So when I go to my scoring projects page in Notion, this is what I see. So I have all of the films that I've worked on, am going to work on, am working on currently, the type of project that it is, the status for the project, the year, directors, and producers. That's just as like a formality. Okay, now if I head over here to this new icon and I hit this arrow, I see I have this film score template project already pre-made. Now I'm gonna take you into this and show you what I have. Here's the template. Down here, as you can see, we have three very clear sections of the page. At the top, we have our agenda and a timeline view of what the project is like. At the place where I am in my career, this is about as complicated as it gets, but you can add more things here if you need to. On the side here, we have a variety of different areas that are relevant to the day-to-day operations of each thing. So I have an area dedicated to keeping notes, some to like task lists, things related to recording, etc. Then the most important section, and this is the cues section. This is where each cue for the film exists, and I input all of the information that is relevant for each cue so that I know exactly what I need to score. Okay, so let me break this down for you. Starting at the very top, we have a little text input So I can just input whatever I want here. Let's say May 15th, 2021. I usually like to make this bold. Let's just say that that's our deadline, right? I just like to have that at the top of the page so that it's always staring at me in the face. Directly underneath that, I have a block here with something called a timeline view. In Notion, this is fairly new. In Notion, you can look at different pages in the course of a timeline. So here we're in month view. You can change the view here. And for example, pre-production conversations should happen, you know, these days, and I should prepare for what's going to happen in these days. And I'm going to write for a week and mix for 5 days, and then I deliver the project at the very end. Now, this is kind of like an aspirational timeline. Sometimes things don't pan out, but you know, you can always tweak the length of each section of your production process. Now, these are all pages that you can open up. So for example, in the composing timeline view, so as you can see here, I have a table that has a variety of different things in it. So I organized this in a way to show the capabilities of what this is. And in this case, I don't have anything that I actually use, but someone may. So we have each task, right? So say I have to send Q M1M to orchestrate. I set the type as an orchestration task, and then you can assign things to different people. So if you have a team of people working with you, then if you have them use Notion also, you can have them access these pages so that you can assign them whatever, and they have access to everything that isn't music related. I, of course, don't have a team. I never use this, but this is just to show you what it can do. So as each phase is done, I just hit the check mark and then move on to the next part of the process until you're done. Then that's it. So that's the agenda section of my template. Okay, so the next section we have is this side section. So at the top here, I have space for if I have a script. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. It just depends on the project and how much time I have and how early I'm brought onto the film. Under that, I have a notes section. First thing is a brain dump page. So if I go in here, I have it further broken up into 3 more sections. So I have a research section, mood board section, and a sound palette section. So for example, if I have inspirations for things that I want it to sound like, then I'll put it here in the mood board section. If I'm looking to do research on a certain kind of sound or something else, I can put links or whatever else here under research. And if I come up with unique sounds that I want to use for the specific project, then I'll put it down here in the sound palette section. If we go back, we see I have a director's notes section, pre-scoring conversations, and I have a separate page for the spotting session. If you're a film composer, then you know what this is. It's not a very complicated table here, but sometimes directors fill this out for me already, so I don't have to input it myself. Right underneath the director's notes section, I have a contact info page. This is just so that I have the contact information for everyone who's important that I need to get to on a project. So I have a pre-made section for director, producers, the editor, sound mixer, etc., etc. You can add more as you feel you need more people to keep in contact with per project. Okay, then after the notes section, I go into my tasks section. So these are basically checklists that I've pre-made so that I don't forget to do something important that's relevant to my workflow. So I have a pre-scoring list of things that I need to do. So I need to talk to the producer first, then the director, what I need from the editor, and some things to remind myself as well. Underneath that, I have my template checklist. So I use Logic Pro, and every time I set up a brand new Logic template, I want to make sure that I do things in Logic first before I I get started, and that template gets copied for every queue that I use for that specific project. So I have a checklist so that I do everything the same way every time that I create a new project in Logic. Underneath that, I have my mixing ritual checklist. I have a small mix schematic. This is something I learned some other people do. So if you have certain cues you need to mix, there are certain things that you want to make sure you keep track of whenever you mix something. So this table is for that. This takes me to a separate mixing page that I've made elsewhere in Notion that just has everything that's mixing related for me. And then a quick link to Cinematic Composing's Mixing for Composers course, which I'm a really, really big fan of. I'm glad I invested in that course because I learned a lot. And then, of course, checklists for what I'm actually mixing so I don't forget anything important. So underneath that, I have my recording section. Now, truth be told, I have never had the opportunity to use this section, but I have everything already laid out in the case that happens. The reason I haven't been able to do it is because each project happens so quickly, and by the very end, there's no time to record live instruments, even though every single time I want to record live players, at least one or two in each project, but I still have never gotten to do it yet. Okay, so first, I have my score preparation list, basically. So this is things that I want to keep for myself so I know how to present my printed paper out to my musicians. This is based off of a Scoring Notes blog post. Scoring Notes is a fantastic blog that talks about music notation and music notation software, and it's super nerdy, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. And this is based off of one of those blog posts. Next, I have a recording schedule page. This is just so if I am going to record something, I have it scheduled out on a calendar. Not much in there. I also have a session planner page. So I can write in what cues need to be recorded. And then when we're actually recording, this is so that we know exactly what needs to be recorded on what part. So we have the different ensembles. Say it's a what kind of ensemble we have to record, different notes, if we're going to actually use it or not, what take number this is, how long it lasts, etc., etc. Now you'll notice that these look a little different here. This is a function of Notion which gets into the more advanced realm, but I'll bring it up here. You can learn more about it on your own later. There's just too much to go over, but there's a concept in Notion known as rollups and relations. So if we have our cue recording list right here, I can relate this cue. So this is M101. I can relate it to M101 of our cue page on our main page here, right? So that cue is being related to this cue out here. So as I input all of this information, it populates in the session planner page. So for example, if the BPM for Q1M1 is 80, right? I put that in there. Now, if I go back to the session planner page, you will see now that it has populated the BPM section with 80 because it's taking what I put in out there and is populating each part that has this little magnifying glass. So the cue title would pop up here if I had one, and the cue duration would pop up here if I had one as well. So that's a great time saver. So you don't have to keep going back and forth trying to populate each section with that information. It's already filled in for you if you're relating to the correct cue on your main cue page, which I think is a fantastic feature of Notion, that you can relate to other projects and have it populate to what's shown on the other one. I hope that makes sense, but I think you could see. So okay, let me type this out. Intro. Say we begin at 00 and it's 1 minute long, right? So our duration is 1 minute. And if we go back to our session planner page, we can see all of that has been populated. Intro, it's 80 beats per minute, and it's going to last a minute. And this is, I think, invaluable information for if you do need to record something. So that's a cool feature of Notion that I think is really useful. Past that, I have a recording checklist. I have virtually nothing in there because I am inexperienced in recording. So feel free to populate that yourself. I don't really have anything in there because I haven't had a chance to. Musician contacts is, again, this arrow means that it's a link to another page that I have in Notion somewhere else. This is a table of just the names of musician friends that I have and the instruments that they play, who have very graciously allowed me to hit them up whenever, if I ever need to record their instrument. I have a list of 130 people in there. You cannot have this page, you can't have my contacts. I'm sorry, but I highly recommend just calling up or, posting on Facebook if someone's ever willing to record something for you, and put that in the page in Notion so that you always know who to call up if you need that instrument recorded. And then under the recording section, I have a reference section. This is just things, this to remember things, just, things I want to remember just in general. This links to my Notion page that has each lesson that I have with my private lesson teacher if I want to ever want to reference something that we've gone over in the past. This links to my jazz arranging Notion page. It just has a bunch of info of arranging for big band and for jazz in general. These are two links that this links to a Spitfire Audio blog post, which is basically the process of scoring a film. And this page in particular has helped me a lot in building this template. So I'll leave a link for that in the description as well. And this is just another link that takes me to my cinematic composing course on mixing for composers. Okay, so now that leaves our final section here, which, like I said before, is our most important section. So this is our cues section. Now you see I have 10 cues laid out in a cue ID column. If you don't know, the 1 stands for the real number, so this is real number 1. M stands for music. The secondary number is just the specific ID for each of these. So 1 M1, 1 M2, 1 M3, so on and so forth. The cue title, so this is, sometimes the name of a track, like if you find it on a soundtrack, this will be the title for it. The notes section is used to populate, say, like the director want, or your own notes for what you want to do for each of these cues, just so that you remind yourself of important things for each cue. Now we have our endpoint. This is the simply timecode format here. So this is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. And then the in action. So if, for example, you put in logo pops up or something, and then the out action is, I don't know, we see our hero open their eyes. So this is just what happens at the beginning of the endpoint. Then the out point is the end of that specific cue. I also have a BPM column here. I think that's important. One, so that you have the BPM for whenever you're going to record, and this populates the BPM portion for the session planner for if you're ever going to record. But also, I think it's also important to know the tempo for when you're mixing, or if you outsource this to another person, you don't have to go into the project to find out what the tempo is. You just have it right here. Now, you can see the endpoint is at 0. The out point we set at 1 minute. Now we have a duration column here, and you'll see that it wrote it out as 1 minute. Now I didn't do that, but there's a formula set up in Notion that does that calculations for me. So obviously a minute is very easy to calculate, but say this were 1 minute and 30 seconds and 10 frames. And we say we begin at 4 seconds, right? So now it'll calculate the difference between the in point and the out point. Now, how is that possible that Notion can find the difference between two SMPTE numbers? That is, like I said, is using formulas in Notion. So you can put in exactly what kind of mathematics you want Notion to be doing under the hood so that I can get the difference between these two numbers. Now, I am horrendous at math. I'm not good at it at all. So I went on Reddit, went to the Notion subreddit and asked for help how to find the difference between two time codes. And a gracious user by the name of Ben something helped me out in making the formula for me. So much thanks to Ben something. I also highly recommend checking out the Notion subreddit. There are a bunch of cool things that pop up there. I'm on there a lot as well, and I think it's a great community over there. So that's worth checking out. Okay, so where do these formulas live? Now, in this table, we have a each of these columns are known as properties, and we can go into these properties and see what we have active or what we have showing, which is all of these, and you can see we have a ton of things that are inactive. So this is the formula that's laid out. I have absolutely no idea how it works, but if you get this template, you'll get this formula built in as well. It just gets the difference between each of the in points and out points, calculates it, and gets a duration. Now, I also have another section underneath the reel called totals. You can see that I have a duration column and the not done duration column. This is to say that if we have another queue that we need to write, say 1M02, and this begins at 2 minutes, 34 seconds, and 11 frames. And then this ends at 4 minutes and 20 seconds and 14 frames. So that's a duration of 1 minute and 46. And you'll see that it's populated the duration column, adding up both of these durations together to get how much music you have left to write. Now, as you check each of these off, so for example, I finished 1M1, right? I hit the done. Now it's recalculated what isn't done, and what isn't done is our second queue here. So that's what it's put down here. And as you add in more information for each and every queue, it'll calculate how much music it is total. And as you hit done on each queue, it'll calculate what has yet to be finished, so that you know exactly how much music you have to write and how much music is left to write. This is something that I learned initially that Danny Elfman does. He wants to know exactly how much time he has left for a project and how much music he has left for a project, so he knows how quickly to work each and every day, or how hard, or if he's safe and has a good amount of time. I learned that from his masterclass, which you should definitely check out. I think it was very informative, and that was something that I learned from watching that. But thanks to Ben something once again for getting this done. Currently, I believe this is only limited to 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and I think also 25 frames per second. Sometimes you have films that are like 23.97 something. That isn't supported for this. My projects aren't long enough that makes a huge difference for me to find out how long something is and how long something isn't. But I think you can find that kind of formula information online somewhere, but I don't have it built into this template yet. So there's a disclaimer there. Now, moving on, I also have a status column here, and if you press 1, you can choose what the status of each individual queue is. So if you sent it off, it's out for approval. If it's ready to mix, or if it's delivered, you hit delivered, and now you know the status of that queue. This complete by column, you just select the date over which you need the queue finished by. That's where the duration totals can help you out with knowing what your timeline should be. And I also have a frames per second column. It's important to input this information and to put in what the actual frames per second of your project is so that it calculates everything correctly according to the frames per second of your specific project. So that's basically the template in a nutshell. Let me go ahead and show you, let me delete all this first because I don't want this in my template. But let me go ahead and show you what it looks like in practice. So I'm going to open up a project I finished up fairly recently. Okay, so here is my actual Notion page for Sin Aire, which was a show I was just working on for season 4. It's only 1 episode per season. It's a limited series that the university I go to produces, and I was composing for it. So this is for that. I made 2 videos about making the music for this. You should check those videos out. I think they're good, underrated videos. Okay, so you can see the deadline was November 20th. You can see this is where the score was due and I had it checked mark. This is how long I had to write everything. I sent it to him then, mixed within these 4 days, and then delivered it on Friday, November the 20th. So let me show you a cues. So this is the cues pretty well populated here. So you can see there were 23 cues total I had to work on, a total of 13 minutes and 6 seconds, and I have each one laid out. So for example, if I'm looking at cue 4M3, it's I have the 4 there because the episode number is number 4, and I think it just makes sense to have the real number be the episode number since there aren't really reels in TV shows, at least the ones that I get to work on. The cue title is the main credits, right? So this is the main credits. What I have in the notes section is what the director told me, so I just copied and pasted it into each portion where he wanted notes. This is like a spotting session. My endpoints, the in action, so what happens at each endpoint, so I know, like just as a reference, the out point and the out action, the duration for each one. So some of these are like, this was a 45-second cue, this was a minute and 47 seconds, etc. BPM, you can see not all of them are laid out. I think that's because I was running out of time by the end and I just didn't fill out the BPMs because they weren't relevant to the mixing or recording process because I didn't get to do any of that. I did get to mix, but a little bit. I don't outsource that to another person. And then the status. So these were all delivered. This is just scored because we used music that was elsewhere and put it here. I didn't create original music for this. Each of these is done, and the frames per second was 24, and that gives me the actual duration there. So that's a real world example of how I use the Notion page. So if I just need to look at this, I can open this as its own full page. So I just have all of my cues here, and I might have this open while I'm working in Logic so I can reference it. If I have Logic open, then I put Notion in dark mode so that it matches up pretty well, so it's not a dark Logic project, and then I switch over to Notion and it's blinding me with bright white light. So dark mode in Notion looks very nice as well. Speaking of looks, you'll notice I have a bunch of emoji here that I use to characterize each section. Not only do I think it just makes it look cute, a little pop of color here and there, it's easy to look at something and without reading it, just with its icon, recognize what it is. So I think it spices up the project a little more. I'm gonna put this into light mode again. So that's how I use Notion to score movies. As you can see, Notion can get very granular and there's a lot that you can do with it. Don't worry if you're confused by the end of this of how all of this works. I think Notion's one of those softwares where, because it's so open-ended and you can make anything you want pretty much, you don't know where to start with it. But my advice would be have a goal that you want in mind. So mine was to figure out a way to organize my scoring projects. and then build from there, and then you'll learn what Notion can and can't do. And again, check out Thomas Frank's video. Ali Abdal also has some great Notion videos as well. All kinds of creators out there make Notion videos. There's a very loyal cult following for Notion, and I wouldn't say I'm one of those Notion diehards, but I am a fan, and I like what Notion allows me to do. And like I said, everything that isn't music related to a project lives inside Notion. Once again, all of the links for this templates, the links I mentioned, will be in the description of this video. Go and check it out. If you have any questions about my template or something that I glossed over or that I just outright missed, feel free to ask me. I will try to be as detailed as possible in my response to you. But that's the video. So until next time, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Ernesto Composer. You can visit my website at ernestocomposer.com. Thanks so very much for watching, and as always, take care.